The most important race in the Senate is in Pennsylvania because how Dave McCormick does will influence how Donald Trump does. And not only do the Republicans get the Senate if that man wins, Donald Trump gets the presidency if he wins Pennsylvania. Good morning, Dave McCormick. Welcome back. Good to have you, sir.
Good morning, Hugh. How are you today?
I am great. It appears to me that you are winning, and I know you are not overconfident. You're a member of the 82nd Airborne, so you're never going to be overconfident. The jump's just starting, but how do you feel about the jump?
I feel great. I honestly do. The polls have closed dramatically, and I feel like I've got the momentum. And, I think the more they see of Bob Casey and the more they get to know about me, I think the contrast becomes more certain. And I think Kamala Harris is helping me in Pennsylvania and helping President Trump. It may be the one state where Joe Biden would have been better for the Democrats because Scranton Joe had some real ties here, had been campaigning here for about 50 years. And she's just completely out of step with Pennsylvania, with the ban fracking and the mandatory buybacks of guns and the, defunding the police and so forth. And Bob Casey's a sure vote, a 99% vote. So, the way I've framed the race is it's the difference between change and the status quo. It's the difference between strength and weakness. The difference between a seventh generation Pennsylvanian, born and raised, and a combat vet, someone who's been a businessman, a West Point graduate, a political outsider, against a guy who was born with a political spoon in his mouth, has been in elected office for 30 years, and is just too weak and too liberal to stand up to the extreme people in his party. So I think that's sinking in, and that's why I think I'm on a good path here.
I want to play Dave McCormick for people who did not watch the McCormick-Casey debate earlier this week. Dave McCormick's closing argument. It's a minute 10. He's heard it. He delivered it, but I want the audience to hear it. Cut number 22.
I retired from the Army as a captain after a combat tour in Iraq, but I've never stopped serving my country. I'm a seventh-generation Pennsylvanian, born and bred. I'm a businessman. I'm a political outsider. That couldn't be more different than Senator Casey was born with a political spoon in his mouth. He doesn't know how to create jobs. He doesn't understand the devastating effect of prices on families. He is a status quo candidate. He is a weak 30-year incumbent. Bob Casey didn't change Washington. Washington changed Bob Casey. He's for amnesty, open borders, and sanctuary cities. He's voted for every spending bill that's created this enormous uptick in inflation. He wants to raise taxes on Pennsylvanians and lower taxes for rich people in California and New York. He has actually supported males competing in women's sports. Face it, Bob, you are a liberal. Bob Casey he's been given the opportunity and he has failed us. We need leadership that's going to shake things up, that support and fight for common sense policies, reduce inflation, secure our border, keep America safe. We need leadership that is going to change the direction of our Commonwealth and get it back on track. I'm honored to be here tonight, and I humbly ask for your vote.
I think it was a great closing statement. Let me pick one piece out, Dave McCormick, because it came up last night. I do not often on this show talk about children suffering from gender dysphoria. I know too many parents and too many grandparents who have children who have gender dysphoria. However, boys should not play girls' sports. That was clear in your presentation. Democrats don't want to talk about that. Has Bob Casey said anything about it?
No, he doesn't want to talk about it, but he certainly voted for it. And as a father of six daughters, this is something I'm very focused on opportunity and women's empowerment and making sure my girls have every opportunity in the world, six of them. And this would destroy Title IX. It's fundamentally unfair. If you're someone who wants to focus on women's rights, it seems to me that allowing biological men to compete in women's sports is the opposite of women's rights. So it's an issue that is representative. I don't think deep down in his heart and soul, Bob Casey could believe that either, that we should allow men to compete in women's sports. But because his party has moved so far to the left and because he's too weak to stand up and show an independent voice, he's now voted for a bunch of things that are completely out of step with Pennsylvania. And this is a very good example of that.
All right, now I want to finish on foreign policy, Dave McCormick. And I can get to call you Dave for a while, then I have to call you Senator. Very annoying with Tom Cotton, but I still have to call him Senator. The fact of the matter is, we're on right now in Scranton, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. The latter two, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, have large Jewish American supporters and many Americans who support Israel, like me, who are not Jewish. Yesterday, there was released a letter that threatened an arms cutoff to our ally Israel in the middle of a war. Dr. Michael Oren was just on. He cannot believe they sent that. What was your reaction to the Blinken-Austin letter threatening an arms cutoff in 30 days? And what is your support for Israel? And how is the Jewish vote and the pro-Israel vote, they're different, they overlap, moving in Pennsylvania in this race?
Well, this is a test. You know, my friend Dan Senor did a podcast with me, and he said when October 7th happened, it was like a flare went up. And if you were Israel or the Jewish people, you saw who were your friends and who were your foes. It's a test. And we need to stand, you know, as you know, Dina and I went to Israel in January. We need to stand with Israel in the fight for its life, not try to put constraints on it. It's fighting for its survival. And it's got a multi-front war against Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and Iran, of course, the original sin. And the Iran deal, which Bob Casey voted for, which gave Iran $100 billion to fund proxies, terrorist proxies. So we need to stand with Israel. They know best how to protect themselves and eradicate this threat. But we also have a war here at home. This rise of anti-Semitism. I'm not Jewish either, Hugh, but I've been dumbfounded by what we've seen on our nation's campuses. And once again, Bob Casey has been so weak. He's endorsed Summer Lee, who is the congresswoman from Pittsburgh in my district. She is an avowed anti-Semite. She said some horrible things, and Bob Casey won't unendorse her. And the reason is that there's these extreme anti-Semites, extreme anti-American leaders in the Democratic Party that just that have hijacked the Bob Caseys of the world, and they don't have the moral courage to stand up to it. So we need to fight anti-Semitism at home, support Israel in its fight for its life abroad. And there's not two sides to this story. Hamas is pure evil. The butchery that happened on October 7th was unforgivable. And it shows that we need to eradicate this evil in the world, and we need to strangle Iran with economic sanctions and stop their being able to support terrorism across the region.
Dave McCormick, most of America watched Kamala Harris self-immolate last night. There are a few people out there saying, like the Black Knight in Monty Python, it's only a flesh wound, but she was bleeding from every place that she got asked a question about. After that, do you expect Bob Casey to try and distance himself from Kamala Harris?
No. I mean, this guy is just too weak to do so. He was asked by CNN a couple of weeks ago when they came and trailed us both on the campaign trail. Can you think of a single thing you disagree with Kamala Harris on? He could not think of a single thing. He doesn't have the courage to stand up to the party. He's gone down this path. And the reason this is so important, your question, Hugh, is that Pennsylvanians should know. She is a radical San Francisco liberal. She's told us in her own words all the things she's for. And Bob Casey has shown consistently he doesn't have the courage or the strength or the leadership to stand up. So he'll be a sure vote for this crazy liberal agenda if she was to become president and he's to remain in the Senate. We've got to make change. Bob Casey's the status quo. I'm the change.
Last question, Dave McCormick. Last night, Brett Baer noted that every ad on Pennsylvania television and radio is a political ad. I know, however, you're still raising money, especially hard money, small dollar donors. Is that going to micro-targeting at this point? Is that all online that we don't see?
Well, there's some of it on TV, but for those who want to learn more about me, it's DaveMcCormickPA.com. But I'm doing all sorts of things to get to those swing voters across our Commonwealth. You know, there's 90% of the voters that have mostly decided we need to get to those 10% that are going to make their final decision with a story and a message of change, leadership, common sense versus weakness, and a liberal economic agenda from a career politician. And there's all sorts of audiences, the Jewish community, as you mentioned, sportsmen, wrestlers. There's a big wrestling population in Pennsylvania. I'm going to make sure they know that they need to elect a wrestler to the U.S. Senate.
Dave McCormick, thank you. I look forward to talking to you again before the election, especially on Election Day. We're going to be getting out the vote as much as we can. So thank you very much. DaveMcCormickPA.com is his website. DaveMcCormickPA.com is his website. I just posted it on my X account.